everybody, and welcome to this National Children's Orchestra webinar. We have got two absolutely legendary panelists with us today. Brilliant, both experts in their field, and I'm sure you are going to get so much out of these two. They are both really interesting people, and they've got so much great stuff, great advice to share with you, and so many brilliant things to say. So we have Claire Bennett, who was a member of Great Women's foil fencing team. Absolutely brilliant. Part of the, you went to the Olympics as well, didn't you? Is that right, Claire?
Well, just missed out actually on London
So
2012.
that's your story. You'll tell us all in a
Exactly.
second. Yeah, really brilliant. And the fantastic trombonist with the Halle Orchestra, Katy Jones. Katy, welcome as well. So these are two women with inspirational stories, and we're going to delve into them a little bit. Claire, in fact, I'm going to come to you first, and I would like to know about your journey. So you kind of hinted about it then, but tell us a little bit about your journey, what you do, your sport, and kind of where you are now.
Yeah, so I used to do fencing for Great Britain. I started when I was 9 years old. Went to my first World Championships at 14 years old, so it got serious quite early on. And then I guess my proudest achievement in my fencing career is captaining the England team to a gold medal at the Commonwealth Games. But of course, like in any career at elite level, there's lots of highs, lots of lows, and I guess my lowest of lows was just like I said, just missing out on the London 2012 Olympic Games, my home Olympic Games, which was even harder. But then, so I retired at that point when I was 27 years old, and in my life beyond sport, I have become a qualified performance coach, a leadership trainer. So I've been working a lot with many different orchestras to help them with their performance anxiety before they go on stage, with their growth mindset, with that sense of continuous improvement and motivation as well. So yeah, lots of orchestras up and down the country. London Symphony Orchestra, RNCM. I know Katy, you're there at the moment. Lots of different orchestras, and I've really enjoyed that. But I also work with young people, vulnerable young people facing disadvantage, and help to mentor them, help them to achieve their goals, as well as corporates as well. So lots of different people, and I just love what I do. I get to use what I learnt from elite sport to help others achieve their goals.
So I want to come in on what you've just said, how you use those skills to help others, and just two words that really stuck out to me there, which I loved: continuous motivation and improvement. That's what you're all about, isn't it? And that's
Yeah.
something that we all aspire to as musicians, isn't it? Continuous motivation, continually being motivated to do what we do, and improvement as well. So, what skills did you learn as a sports person that then have helped you in your career now and have helped you to flourish?
I guess like the main thing in my sporting career was that I basically built some world-class attitudes and behaviors that have kind of set me up for life. Things like, work ethic, determination, that discipline, uh, um, also just like never giving up. I built a resilience that I wouldn't have done if I hadn't experienced disappointment throughout my fencing career. So dealing with disappointment, I'm really open to failure. I want it in my life because I know that, I personally don't think you can achieve or lead teams or achieve much without going through discomfort. So all of those things have made me a much more well-rounded person and ultimately a better performing person as well.
So let's go in on resilience and failure, because I think this is something that, especially when in our early careers as young musicians, we try so hard to avoid. But you said then it's a really important part of growth, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I know the thing is when the spotlight's on you, and I know there's all sorts of things you go through as a musician, not just when you're performing in a concert, but let's say you're trying to win an audition or a job, or it can be if the spotlight's on you, there's no hiding place. And I guess when it comes to failure, I just see it as, like the acronym fail, it's for me, it's the first attempt in learning. That's how I see it. That is the only way I see it. And my little phrase is to fail forward and fail fast. So embrace failure as that kind of space of learning, you know. So and it's all about perception, right? So if you can see like an opportunity or something difficult, let's say you're going through a difficult challenge, you're just about to do an audition, you can either see it as a threat or you can see it as that opportunity to grow. So for me, it's just controlling that your thoughts around it. And if you do fail, you know, it's okay. We all make mistakes. And I think, you know, when my daughter, for example, I've got a 7-year-old daughter, and when I pick her up from school, we have like a mistakes club. So I will genuinely celebrate her mistakes every day, you know, rather than just asking her, how did your day go? I'll say, well, what didn't go so well? And then she might say, oh, I don't know. I'm trying to think what didn't go so well for her as a 7-year-old. I guess maybe she didn't listen in class and she spoke to one of her friends. And then I'll be okay. Well, what was learning from that? You know, what will you do next time? What will you do differently next time? So yeah, fail forward, fail fast is absolutely my mindset. I'm not scared to fail. I used to have an intense fear of failure when I was younger, and now I welcome it. I embrace it, and it's quite freeing. You know.
I think that's really, really cool, and I think it's a really important thing for us to learn as musicians and as performers, and actually in our everyday life. So, what I will ask our NCO, our National Children's Orchestra, to do now, you don't have to put it anywhere on our webinar, but I would love for you to just make a little note, exactly as Claire did with her daughter. Make a little note of something that hasn't gone right. It doesn't have to be today. It can be something recent, something that hasn't gone right that you were maybe disappointed with or not happy with, and then when we're off the call today, have a little think about what's the next step. What is the fail forward? What's the first attempt in learning then? Katy, I'm going to come to you now. Katy, I'm really excited to talk to Katy because I've been watching Katy in concerts and actually been in concerts with Katy. She probably doesn't know when I've, been in with the Halle every so often. But yeah, I was really excited to talk to Katy because she is a bit of a legend to me in the trombone world. She's a trombonist with the Halle Orchestra. But you didn't have a very direct route into that world, did you, Katy? You kind of took a bit of a detour before you came back to classical music, didn't you? Tell us about your journey.
Yes, I did take a slight detour. And of course, I remember working with Linton because basically trombones sit almost behind the bassoon. So we have to deafen you. Sorry about that. So I should have started today by apologizing for making your hearing deteriorate. Um, so, so yeah, I actually, I mean, I started in my local brass band up in on the edge of the Yorkshire Dales. There wasn't a lot to do around that time in the Yorkshire Dales. So I spent a lot of time practicing my trombone. I mostly chose the trombone to shock my mum, to be honest, because I liked the slide. It was bigger than me. And yeah, I thought that the size of the case was genuinely going to shock my mum when I got home. That's still my reason to play the trombone. I think I just like the fact that it can be shocking. And as a younger girl, I suppose it was a slightly unusual thing to do. And I quite liked that. Then when I was 13, I went to Cheetham School of Music. I was so fortunate because when I grew up, which was just a few years ago, we had access to completely free music tuition, completely free peripatetic lessons. So my parents didn't earn a lot at all. So all my lessons until I went to Cheetham's were free. And then when I went to Cheetham's, I had pretty much a full scholarship. So it was cheaper for me to probably go to Cheetham's and eat all of their food and have my washing done there than it was for me to be at home. So I had an amazing time at Chet's. I loved it. I met all these people who were so much more like me than I'd ever met, who loved music, loved playing. And also, I really craved being around people who were much better than me because I guess when you live in a sort of a rural area, I was sort of held up as this kind of, oh, well, now Katy will play this. And it was, I hated it. So it was amazing to be around all these like-minded people who also loved music. But then after Chet's, I decided to go and study something completely different. So I went and did a pharmacy degree in Manchester. So there was still lots of music going on because Manchester is just brilliant for music in such a small area. There's so much going on of every genre you could imagine. And so I stayed in Manchester because of that, basically. So even
What made you choose pharmacy, Katy?
Okay, yeah, good question. So, well, I think I thought if I hadn't done music, I might have gone and done medicine. But I thought if I went and did medicine, that I might never come back to music. Although, did you know that the new principal horn in the Chicago Symphony Orchestra is a fully qualified doctor and respiratory medicine professor, because we were in the
Well,
NYO together.
I'll tell you another one as well, Katie. The ex-principal oboe of a Royal Orchestra is one of the country's top brain surgeons as well.
Wow.
There you go. See, it's not that unusual after all for us to kind of go and do these weird and wonderful degrees. But I clearly didn't have the confidence in myself to go and do medicine and then do something else. So, but I did pharmacy, and I loved it because the first question people asked me wasn't, what instrument do you play? And it took the pressure off completely. And in my first year, I almost had a year off practicing until I went and did the most appalling audition for the European Youth Orchestra ever known to man. It was horrendous. So it was an awful audition, and it was a real leveler. And I thought, oh, I don't like getting worse. So then I really started practicing again. And I was the first person at the door when the music department opened at 8:30 every morning, even though I wasn't a music student. I was always there. No danger of any music students being there at that time, by the way. And then I used to cycle up to my pharmacy degrees lectures, which started at 9, did that 9 till 5, and then went back to the music department to practice afterwards. But I could never practice for hours and hours a day. So I always had to be very efficient in my practice because I didn't have hours to practice. So I had to be very focused and efficient in how I practiced. It was really important that it was quality, not quantity in that time. And then during my...
Oh, sorry,
sorry,
I'm gonna interrupt you there because I think, do you know what? I am out of music college more years than I'm going to admit now, and I find it hard to sometimes think about quality rather than quantity of practice in terms of what I get out of it. And in fact, I think I would say I find it harder now to practice in many ways than I did when I was at music college and I had endless amounts of time. So let's talk a little bit about quality versus quantity of practice before you kind of finish off your story of where you got to and how you came back to music. Just talk us through a little bit about quality and quantity of practice, because they are all under this umbrella of kind of health and how we approach things, and we'll get into that a little bit more as well.
Yeah, I mean, I like to have a routine. So I like a routine because I think if you've got a routine, then instead of doing one exercise and thinking, now what do I do, and procrastinating and making a cup of tea, or I don't know, nowadays checking your phone. Obviously that didn't exist, thankfully, when I was a student. Otherwise I'd probably got nothing done. But so by having just well, first I do this, and then I do this, and then I do this, it just becomes a habit. It's like when you wake up in the morning, the alarm goes off, you don't think about it, switch it off, get up, clean your teeth, have your shower, whatever. It's just a series of habits. And so for me, putting those things in my practice into that kind of same pattern of habits, good habits, mind, is really important. And then you're doing it every day, and you're showing up for yourself every day, and always doing it to the best of your ability every day, but equally not being afraid to fail, because the practice room is the place to fail. So always trying to, instead of berating yourself when it goes wrong, being curious about why it might have gone wrong. So if something goes, oh, didn't work today, what have I done differently? Or, what am I not doing? What am I not thinking about? Am I standing well? Am I breathing well? So it gives you that opportunity to reflect. So I guess I didn't have tons of extra time, and I always knew what I was going to practice in that time. So yeah, that's the planner side of me, I suppose.
So it was really having a sense of purpose for each practice session, wasn't it? And something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and I don't know whether this resonates with you, Claire, as a sports person as well, is my mindfulness when I'm practicing. So not to just let my mind wander off and my fingers to start doing whatever they want to do, but also kind of staying on task and saying, right, I'm going to play this piece and this is what I want to try and get when I play this piece, or I'm going to hone in on these 10 bars because the phrasing isn't quite right, or the technique isn't quite right, and then I'm going to put it back in. So for me, a little bit about kind of being mindful when I'm doing whatever it is that I'm doing.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's about being really intentional, isn't it? About and having an empowered, intentional choice around when you're going to do practice. And we used to call it purposeful practice when we did sport. And we exactly what you do, Linton. Like we would literally set out each day once we've done our 2-hour training session. even if we'd felt unsatisfied with it, we'd put our weapons down and we'd walk away. And it was really important, because what that did was it kept us motivated. It meant that we'd come back the next day and we wanted more. And the thing is, the danger of like overtraining or over practicing is that it leads to things like negative perfectionism, and ultimately it leads to burnout and resentment, and all of the stuff that we'll probably talk about, in terms of our mental health and well-being. It doesn't help with sort of thriving and flourishing, does it? And that sense of motivation to help drive our performance forward. So yeah, I mean, purposeful intentional practice is one of the most important things, I think.
And Katy, it sounds like you had really mastered that, because you were short on time, and sometimes that's a positive thing, because you have to make the most of the little time that you have.
Yeah, that was the thing for me. It was great in that I had to do that. My hand was forced. And so I just had to learn to do that myself. I also had to become my own best teacher, because I didn't have such regular lessons as if I'd been at music college. So that meant that I had to play and reflect and then plan what I was going to do next, which is kind of a nice little triangle that I like to have when I'm playing. So you can't play and reflect and plan at the same time. That's not possible. So you play, and then you can think, well, actually that's pretty well, or just have another, have another go, but I'm going to try it this way, or I'm going to try changing where I'm breathing on. Maybe, I feel it a bit more like this, but that's engaging the sort of imagination part of your brain. So really, and I know Claire we were talking about this before this webinar started, and I'm really interested to hear about what Claire says about this. But I work a lot on mental practice with my students, and just really imagining how the music goes. And if I've got new music to learn because of having a full orchestral schedule, most of the time I do that learning in my head. And because I've played the trombone for so many years, my brain can pretend I'm playing the trombone anyway. So it's fine. So I know where it is. I don't even have to look really stupid and move my arm whilst practicing it. I can just simply practice it in there. So I mean, without doing your job, I'm really intrigued.
Katy.
Yeah, I think I might get locked up.
So let's go back a step then. You're entering your last couple of years of your degree, your pharmacy degree. You have kind of switched back on the will and want to practice. So what happens then? Because what ends up happening as well is you end up joining the two in certain ways, don't you?
In the end, which has been amazing. But so basically, when I started talking to my teacher and saying, I think I actually really do want to do music. And he said, well, try auditioning for things, So I thought, well, I better see if I'm keeping up with the people who are at music college. So I had quite a lot of friends at music college, but I thought, right, okay, well, I'll audition for what was the Shell LSO competition then. And I auditioned for Gustav Mahler Jugend Orchestra, which was a bit like the European Union Youth Orchestra, all of Europe. And I thought, well, I'll just have a go. And I realized I was actually keeping up. So my kind of minimal but very focused practice was actually very effective. And I realized I was keeping up. And in fact, I was doing kind of more than keeping up, because I wasn't being surrounded by what was sometimes happening in the music college, was people sort of talking each other down, saying, oh, it's so hard. Can you play this? Oh, no, I can't play it. Oh, it's so hard. No one wanting to be seen to be able to do this thing, no one wanting to quite stick their head above the parapet. But because I was away from that atmosphere, I think it actually served me well. Anyway, I finished my degree and I started applying for jobs, and I was going to do a postgraduate study at Guildhall, but then I got offered a job in the BBC National Orchestra of Wales, so which was ridiculously fortunate. I mean, that just doesn't happen, just so you know. So I've been very lucky at quite a few points in my life, but you do have to be ready to take the look when it's there. So whilst I say it was,
luck is what's the saying? Luck is where preparation meets opportunity.
Yes, exactly. So I had done the preparation and the opportunity came up at exactly the right moment for me. So that was the look. And then they appointed me in the BBC National Orchestra of Wales. And I stayed there for 3 years, which was amazing. And microphones on from day one. So you immediately get used to the fact that microphones are just the norm, which again is a great sort of way to train, because everything matters, absolutely everything. But during that time, a job opportunity came up at the London Symphony Orchestra. And if you'd asked me when I was a teenager what my dream job would be, it would have been to play principal trombone with the London Symphony Orchestra. But I didn't know whether that was possible, because at the time there weren't really any ladies doing that. So, or really very many in that orchestra at all. So I just kind of thought, well, I've got nothing to lose. I may as well have a go. No one's expecting me to get anything anyway. So I may as well just throw my hat in the ring. So to be honest, it didn't really matter to me that I'd not seen it there before. In a way, I saw it as removing the pressure, because I thought, well, no one expects me to get anything anyway. I'll just go and play the best I can. And then there I was. I got a trial there and worked there, and then got the job eventually, which was fantastic. So I realised my dream in the end, which by a slightly circuitous route, and then I decided to do ballet.
What's really nice, Katy, is listening to your story, is your ambition that you set for yourself was really high. Every single time you were going for really high things. And I think that's a really important thing in any kind of anything where we have an intense practice for what it is that we do. Because I think what you were saying about people kind of talking it down, I remember when I was at music college and we were talking about EU, European Union Youth Orchestra, and in fact we used to call it EU, why bother? Um, but not being around that kind of negativity, that don't try it. Keep your ambition really, really high, because what's the worst that can happen? They can say no, and then we can use Claire's mantra, which is failure is the first attempt in learning. I think this is something that feels like, listening to your story, Katy, your bar has always been really set high for yourself, but not because you have a high standard for yourself, but because it's like, well, if everybody else is going for it, why can't I?
Yeah, I mean, it is. So I've aimed high, but equally, it's a bit like walking up a mountain. If you walk up a mountain and you keep looking at the top, it'll seem a really long way away and it'll feel very, very hard. So you can't keep looking at the top of the mountain. You've got to keep taking it step by step, wasn't it? Say, yard by yard, life is hard. Inch by inch, life's a cinch. I know it's like an Americanism, isn't it? But it's that you just got to keep every day taking a step in the right direction for your goal, I suppose. And so I wasn't thinking every day as I was a teenager, I want to be, principal trombone with the LSO. I just suddenly went, oh my goodness, all those standards I held myself to in my practice room. It was the things I did and showed up for every day that made a difference, not the big things. In a way, it's the little things that you do every day that make a difference. And I'd love to hear what Claire has to say on this.
Yeah, it just I love what you're saying, Katy. I really relate to that, and as you were talking, it reminded me of the day that we won the Commonwealth Games when I was the captain. And I remember saying to the team, whatever you do, just don't imagine the gold medal around your neck. And I know that sounds really weird, because it's important to have that vision. But what we actually did, the most powerful thing we did that day, was we set group stepping stone goals, like 5 or 6. Some of them were around performance and very technical, like footwork, timing, tempo. But a lot of them were like mindset, mental. So I remember one of them being like, imagine you've got ice running through your veins, just to keep us calm, composed, and like ready for action. And we just kept it in our back pockets and our what's called our fencing breeches. And so every time there was a break, we went to the toilet, we'd have a look as a team, and we'd just keep. And I said to them, if we just keep doing those small stepping stone goals throughout the day, then we're going to perform to our potential and we will win that gold medal. So it's a bit like what you're saying, that sense of repetitive, continuous daily habits, which I really believe in. And sometimes, when you think too far ahead, it takes you away from the present, right? So you think too far ahead about that gold medal, or about wanting to be in that orchestra, whatever it is. And it really, for me, it paid for us as a team to just stay in the present in that moment and just focus on those small things along the way.
Let's talk a little bit about, because we both touched on this, but let's talk a little bit about nerves. You're both in jobs that require a lot for you, physically for you to give and to perform in front of people. And I'm really interested in the parallels, because I think there are a lot of parallels between sport and music and performance. What do you guys do to prepare for something big? Whether it's a tournament, or whether it was an audition, or a massive piece that involves a trombone that I can't think of right now. Maybe a Mahler symphony or something.
Claire, do you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I guess the first thing I do is, and we sort of mentioned it before, is visualization. So I would spend about 10 minutes, not long, about 10 minutes in the morning visualizing. It might be on my way to training or something, on the train, on the bus, and then I'd do another 10 minutes just before I fell asleep, and I'd imagine myself performing really well, but also things going wrong, so that when that happened in the moment, I would be really ready to lean into that and step into that without being thrown. So that would be the first thing I do. I'd also like reframe my anxiety as excitement as much as possible. So I would, rather than, if I was going to a major world championships, for example, rather than say, oh my God, I'm so nervous, I'd say, do you know what, Claire? I get to do this. I get to step out in front of this audience and do the thing that I love most. I get to do my passion. How lucky am I? And what else? I guess I would really focus on the quality of my thoughts as well. So to be honest, I was someone who suffered terribly from performance anxiety. Um, Throughout my fencing career, and I wish actually that I understood it like I do now, because I definitely would have been a better performing athlete. And I think if I could have understand that I'm not my thoughts as well, so I'm definitely was, when I was younger, very much more of a self-judge and a self-coach. And I think now I have the ability to step outside of my thoughts and be that kind of observer of my thoughts. So when I've got those negative thoughts, I kind of imagine it like, this is when my little girl worries about things, I tell her, just imagine like they're all bubbles, all these thoughts and worries and anxieties, and I just literally go to her and I go pop, 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 and she immediately feels lighter. But having that ability to kind of step out of a thought spiral, or an anxiety or a stress, and to kind of be in that kind of present conscious mind is just it's freeing. And so it's kind of trying not to let the anxiety, so if you find it hard to choose a different thought, my advice would be to try not let the anxiety take hold of you. Just let it pass through you, accept it, acknowledge it, and try and just let it pass through you. It's okay to feel nervous. It's good to feel nervous. It means that you're excited about it and that you're ready, in a sense.
Katy?
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, Claire speaks so eloquently about it. It's fantastic. Yes, I mean, I love so many of those ideas. I guess I've got a couple of things which might relate to musicians, and that is, I remember being so nervous when I did the final of the BBC Young Musician of the Year, which, do you know what? It's brilliant being this old, because there's no video footage. Great. Some of the NYO tried to find some one year, and I was like, that's the one benefit from being this old. It's not on YouTube. So, but I remember being so nervous that when I was stood on the front of the stage at the Symphony Hall in Birmingham, in front of the NYO, because it was the NYO who accompanied us that year. And I remember my kneecaps going up and down. I was so nervous trying to play the Gordon Jacob Trombone Concerto. It was terrifying. But there's a few things that I've learned along the way. I sat behind an amazing trumpet player who you will have heard without realizing that you've heard, at the London Symphony Orchestra, called Maurice Murphy. So if you listen to Star Wars or Superman or Jurassic Park, anything with a big trumpet part in, those older films, you've heard him, because he was the principal trumpet. And he had this amazing stance where you could tell when Maurice had something coming up that he maybe found hard, because he just kind of got bigger in his seat, and his legs were like really flat his feet were flat on the floor, and he was grounded, and he just used to lift up a bit higher and just be so certain that it was going to work, that you were never in any doubt. And so I think you have to be, and especially in kind of those danger positions, those principal brass positions, where if you have a moment of doubt and you think, will this, well, you will. You've had it. You just kind of have to go for it and trust the work that you've done in the practice room for those things. When it's slightly different, I find it very difficult and very different now switching to solo work. And I do have to try and remember, one, that it's a privilege to be there, two, to reframe it as excitement. So I sometimes use sort of calming meditations, or even calming meditations or positive affirmations. And I remember before I did a concerto with the Halle, actually just a few years ago, which was written for me, and that's really far out of my comfort zone now, because I'm used to sitting at the back, which is a long way from the audience and the microphones, and I'm very happy there, thanks very much. And I remember sitting in the dressing room beforehand thinking, well, Katy, you can either hate this next 20 minutes or you can enjoy this next 20 minutes. And I chose the second, and actually it was great. You know, I really enjoyed it, and it went well because I was allowing myself to enjoy it. But it is hard when you're a musician. I'm sure a sports person as well, because perfectionism is kind of in our DNA. So there's always going to be something I'm not happy with coming off stage. But
I think what I'm hearing is so many parallels about, and one that really resonated with me that you said, Claire, is reframing anxiety as excitement, because actually the body has very, very similar reactions. And if you can, and I often think when I'm broadcasting or I'm speaking live on air, it's all about how my mind perceives what I'm doing. And actually, because people will say to me, how do you deal with the nerves of that? I train my mind to think about certain things in the same way that I train my fingers and my breath and all of those things. And I think of the nerves, which are the result of me doing something that I want to do, are also something that I have to train. This is an entity of being nervous, or that thing of standing up in front of somebody and exposing ourselves, because it is exposing, isn't it? It's very exposing to do a sport that you've trained, or to play a piece of music that you've practiced. The nerves come up, and then so I think there's a lot around how we mentally think about those. And I think, Claire, you talked about, because we're our own worst enemy when it comes to nerves and being in our head, aren't we? And we can train ourselves to not listen to the negative thoughts and to get rid of the self-sabotaging that we all kind of go into, and just making sure that we don't spiral into. We've only got about 12 minutes left, so I'd love to talk, Katy, about how you are now a breathing expert, and I'd love to talk about how that relates to your music, and we can talk about how that also relates to sport. And then I want to make sure we leave 5 minutes to just ask the final question. But very quickly before we do, I've had a couple of questions that have come in from some of the NCO. And I presume these are both for you, Katy, and then the third one, Claire, you can answer as well. What's your favourite thing about playing an instrument, Katy, and what's your favourite piece to play?
Right, well, so I didn't get a lot of choice with which instrument to choose. I had the choice between a cornet and a trombone, and I looked at the cornet, and I must have been such an annoying 6-year-old, because I looked at the cornet and I thought, it's only got 3 buttons, that's a bit rubbish. And I looked at the trombone, and it was bigger than me. It had a slide, which I thought was amazing, and it was, you know, I thought it was going to shock my mum, as I said earlier. So that was my criteria for choosing the trombone. So I'm not one of these people who's absolutely in love with my instrument, you know, oh, I love the trombone and I want to make lots of solo repertoire. I genuinely think I love playing the trombone because it gives me my musical voice, and it allows me to play with all my brilliant colleagues. And I like being in a collective environment. I suppose it's like being in a team sport as opposed to an individual sport. I like being with other people, and I feed off their energy and their brilliance. In terms of what I like to play, well, yes, you mentioned Mahler symphonies, anything that keeps us busy. And we've got John Adams coming in October, and that's always a brilliant challenge. I'm looking forward to playing his chamber symphony again. So I'm looking forward to working with him again. It's a great coup to have him come into the Halle. So yeah, all of those things. Anything where we've got plenty to do.
Claire, do you have a favourite piece of classical music?
Good question. I don't tend to. I mean, I'm not that. I love classical music, but I wouldn't necessarily know like all about the composers, etc. I just enjoy listening it to in the background. So not necessarily, but I will often put it on. You know, when in the car, for example, on long car journeys, rather than even when I just want to be more mindful, instead of listening to a podcast, I'll just put classical FM and I'll just get completely lost in it, and really enjoy it. So yeah, I don't actually have a favourite piece, but I really find it genuinely relaxing, and it helps me to focus in the present, in the moment.
So let's talk, Katy, a little bit about what you do now that combines elements of your pharmacy degree and that side, and how you think about an approach playing and breathing. And I'm sure there's going to be lots of parallels here with sport.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting because in a pharmacy degree, I think we had 0 lectures about breathing. We had quite a lot on anatomy and physiology. So I think when I was being asked to talk about breathing, I just wasn't scared of using the right words. So I wasn't scared of using the word diaphragm, or, you know, different types of muscles, or how things worked within the body. And I also wasn't scared to read the research papers and things like that. So that's basically where it came from. So it wasn't like the pharmacy degree gave me this huge amount of knowledge about breathing. It's come since that, really. But what fascinates me about breathing is not initially, I was talking about the technique of breathing for wind and brass players, which is one thing. But actually what I found so fascinating more recently is the impact that how we breathe has on our whole body systems. So for instance, people think, you know, we always think, oh, more breaths the better, or bigger breaths the better, which for the trombone we sometimes do need. But actually, if you're breathing in and out too much or hyperventilating, what's happening is you're not getting more oxygen in. Because if I stuck a SATS meter, if I stuck an oxygen monitor on my finger now, it would probably read 98 or 99%. So that's already pretty well saturated. And I'm not doing anything special. And I'm definitely not an Olympic or Commonwealth athlete like Claire. So I'm not doing anything unusual to make that happen. But if I'm over breathing, what's happening is I'm not getting more oxygen in. I'm getting rid of carbon dioxide. So getting rid of carbon dioxide is a problem, because whilst it's a waste product, we still need a certain amount of it in our body. Carbon dioxide keeps the right pH of our blood. It relaxes all the smooth muscles in our bodies. It opens up our airways, and it's a vasodilator, so it opens up the blood vessels, so it reduces your blood pressure. It has an incredibly beneficial effect or impact on our whole body. So when you're sending that information to your whole system by the way you breathe, that's not just your respiratory system that you're impacting on, it's your whole nervous system and your immune system. So if you're breathing nice and low and using your diaphragm, I'd be interested if everyone can try and find their diaphragm. I can't see you, but I'll just have to trust that you're looking for it. But actually, everyone always thinks it's lower down than it is, you know? But it's actually, if you can find your rib cage, if you find the bottom of your rib cage there, it's actually tucked underneath. So when we talk about using our diaphragm, we can't use our diaphragm to support air, because it's just relaxing. When we breathe in, it contracts. And when we breathe out, it's just relaxing. So our tummy muscles need to be relaxed enough to allow it to contract down. Because if we're holding our tummy muscles tight, if that's somewhere we hold tension or nerves, then actually we're fighting against ourselves and it becomes more difficult. The other great thing is if you're breathing nice and low and slow and thinking deep rather than big, then actually you're sending really calming messages to your brain, because there's an incredible nerve called the vagus nerve, which is known as the wandering nerve. And this nerve, it comes all the way from your head and it goes down your neck, it's down here, and it goes right through all throughout your gut as well, all throughout here. And people think of our nervous system being top down, but it's not completely top down. So much information is going back to your brain. And the information is about 80% going that way and only 20% going that way. So if you think about it, if you're telling yourself, oh, I'm calm, I'm totally calm, I'm not nervous at all, but you're breathing like this, then you're sending completely conflicting messages to your body. So by, yes, the positive mental approach, that's one thing. But actually, if you can slow your breathing and make it nice and low and slow, and through your nose, most importantly, then you're sending 4 times that amount of information back to your brain. So you're hugely reinforcing that. I hope that was a whistle. That was quite a whistle stop tour. Sorry. I feel like I better start talking now.
Absolutely brilliant. And I'm wondering, Claire, if that resonates with you as a sports person, because there must be, you're doing something really, really physical, something that will make you out of breath. So how does that, what Katy talked about, how does that affect you as well?
Yeah, I mean, I just remember when I used to get stressed and tense, my breathing would become really shallow, right? And it just would intensify my fear, and my performance would deteriorate. So yeah, breath work is really, really important. And we would do just as much of that as we would do mindfulness and visualization. And so absolutely, it has a massive impact. It has a massive impact, and on oxygen levels, and in terms of getting that 1% better, which is what you're always striving to do. It's all of those factors that you have to focus on. And so, as we've been saying all along, it's not just that practice in the music room. It's the psychological, the physiological, everything that comes with playing at an elite level. Is you have to focus on all the different things. So yeah.
And I think Katy's description there really, because I remember there was a lecture when I was at music college that was called Breathing for Pianists and String Players, because I think there's an automatic assumption that it's only an important thing for people who play wind instruments. And actually, I think the way you described it there, Katy, really encapsulates why it's important for anybody who has to perform in some way, whether that be music or sport or public speaking, why breathing is such a huge part of sending the correct signals to your brain. We've got 3 minutes, and I'm really keen to ask you this question. So I want you to both imagine, before we finish, that 14-year-old Katy and 14-year-old Claire are on this call. What is the advice that you would give to your younger selves? What would you have said to your younger selves? Let's start with Claire.
Mine would be as simple as enjoy the journey, because I used to put way too much pressure on myself as an athlete to perform. And I think if I'd focus less on the medals, and focus more on the mastery of my sport and really enjoying it for what it is, I would have been far more motivated. And I would have enjoyed myself more, and I would have been a better performing athlete for it. So enjoy
And
every
would young Claire be proud of you now?
Yeah, absolutely. I've learnt so much along the way. I wish I could give her a hug, to be honest, because she was quite stressed at 14 years old. But yeah, and old Claire is proud of me. And I feel I've learnt so much along the way. I feel like a happier, more well-rounded person, and I'm very glad to have gone through all the experiences of doing something really challenging and difficult, like all the players at NCO are doing, because it will put you in good stead for life. And yeah, it will make you a happy and more well-rounded person.
Thanks, Claire. Katy, what would you say to young Katy in the Yorkshire Dales?
Yeah, trust in yourself and your abilities, and know that your musical story is as valid as anybody else's musical story. And that's what people want to hear, actually. When you play a musical instrument, what we focus on, what we can tend to focus on, is our own mistakes. And actually what the people listening to us are focusing on, they're looking for something positive to write. I always say to my students, if you're an adjudicator, you want to be able to write what incredible storytelling, you create a beautiful line, you don't want to be thinking about whether someone's worried about the wrong notes. So know that your musical story is as valid as mine, Linton's, anybody else's.
And would young Katy be proud of you? I'm sure she would, having got your job in the LSO.
I think so. I think she'd have a level of disbelief, and even more disbelief that I ended up moving from the LSO, which I never thought I would do. But life takes these funny turns sometimes, and I'm very happy back in the north of England. So.
Yeah, I think on the back of what you just said, Katy, I think the important thing to remember is whenever we perform, whatever it is, we have to remember that everybody's rooting for us. Everybody wants us to do, everybody who's listening or watching wants us to do amazing because they want to enjoy
And
it.
although, yeah, and one last thing is, whilst we are a performance as sports people are, we're also a communicative art form. So you have to communicate something of yourself, and that's what makes live music so special.
Listen, thank you both so much. It's 5:45 now, and there has been a wealth of incredible information here. I'm going to have to watch this video back and write down some of these things. This triangle of yeah, that was fantastic. But I just want to say a very personal, and on behalf of everybody on the NCO, from the NCO, a huge thank you, because that was amazing. Thank you so much, both.
Oh, thank you. I've loved it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks. Take care.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.